Hello, dear session participants. It's a great pleasure to see you all online and a great honor for me to present at this West Africa TESOL convention. I'd like to welcome you all to my session, the title of which is Scaffolding Writing Through Visual Storytelling Extension Activities. I've been inspired by the work of Sarah Ferguson at the 2021 TESOL virtual convention called Graphic Gain, Utilizing Visual Storytelling to Maximize Vocabulary Acquisition. But I was also inspired by my participation to the AE Comics VX program in 2020 with my Access students. Next slide, please. In our today's session, we're first going to give you some background information about comics in the Senegalese context. Secondly, we'll talk about the importance of visual storytelling and writing. Thirdly, we'll discuss a way to integrate a writing activity in a lesson plan. And lastly, we'll share with you a few of our students' production. Next slide, please. Even though many people in my generation grew up reading some famous comic books and may become avid readers of our favorite comic characters, I personally did not become aware until recently that comics could be used in great many ways to teach English. Although some course books in Senegal do feature some amount of comic strips, they're most often presented as a way to activate schemata or prompt speaking, but not as a real way to develop writing. There are many factors that have prevented comics and graphic novels from being given due consideration in the Senegalese language classroom. From a social point of view, comics reading has been stereotyped not as being a serious reading genre. Moreover, some type of comics or graphic novels are not deemed very appropriate for classroom use due to their erotic orientation. Those social and pedagogical opinions will not prevent us, however, from considering the great advantages that comics and graphic novels can have in the classroom. Indeed, there are many factors that support the use of visual storytelling for the development of writing. To begin with, comics have a low density of text. There's a limited number of text students need to write in speech bubbles, and they don't even have to write in full sentences. And this is a very supportive feature for beginner students who are struggling to develop their writing skills. And what is more, even if some students may not be very skillful at drawing, many of them may find it fun and relaxing. Therefore, they are more willing to get involved in the task of writing in a foreign language. And finally, writing is a whole process. It involves the active use of cognitive skills. An activity that requires students to write a comic strip, for instance, will make them put in use their critical thinking skills. They will have to make strong decisions about vocabulary, language and imagery, selection, and so on and so forth. So students will have to think about a lot about plot sequencing, settings, character building, and all these things. So it becomes clear that comics has many advantages if teachers want to deal with writing. Thus, in our next slide, we're going to see to what extent the fact of using visual storytelling activities can help teachers solve the problem of writing in the Senegalese context. Next slide, please. Learning to write in an EFL context like Senegal can be quite a challenge. One reason is that students are often in the context of a large class. And another is they may have relatively limited interest to write in English outside of the classroom. Sometimes the lack of motivation to write is attributable to the focus we put on grammar assignment. It becomes therefore essential to find ways to motivate the students to produce interesting writing. Comics comes really handy when the aim of the teacher is to develop writing because it can tremendously boosts our students' motivation. When a teacher assigns a comic-based writing activity, such an activity can be very purposeful. It can be theme-based and easily tied to the life experience of our students. So using storytelling as extension activities can be a great way to extend the time students have in contact with the language outside of the classroom. It will help, it will help, it will help them, it will help them sometimes the lack of motivation to write can be attributable to the focus we put on grammar assignment. And therefore, it is very important we help them develop their writing with the use of comic strip. So assigning an activity like comics creation to enhance writing can help focus more on meaningful practice rather than just grading. And our students who are trying, for our students who are trying to their English, it's a great satisfaction to see that they have been able to produce a beautiful story in English. Following my participation to the TESOL convention in 2021, I have conducted a couple of lessons based on visual storytelling activities. And one of the main objectives of the lessons was to help students write paragraphs by creating a page-long comic strip as a scaffold for paragraph writing. The work I'm going to share with you in the upcoming slide have been produced by 4th students. The class profile is that of a mixed ability elementary classroom. So the students are aged between 13 and 17. So in the upcoming slide, we're going to see how to integrate the writing activity in a lesson plan. Next slide, please. So when it comes to using comic-based activities in the classroom as extension activities, teachers may have different ways of implementing them. One possible way of doing it is to use comics in the framework of an integrated lesson plan. So the first step would be a brainstorming phase. And in this phase, the teacher can use a mini comics or even a panel as a speaking prompt, as demonstrated by Sarah Ferguson in her 2021 TESOL convention. And this can help reactivate students' schemata and previously learned language. So another suitable activity for vocabulary building is picture labeling. This also was shown by Sarah in her presentation. And this type of activity can be used after pre-teaching vocabulary. And students can be guided through a speaking activity later on. And they will be able to practice the vocabulary and the grammar they need to perform the writing task. Next slide, please. And here is an example of my students' production. This is a comic strip made by my student. It's a page-long comic strip with 4 panels. And as you can see, it's about environmental change, okay? Environmental change and environmental issues. So how did we arrive at this result? Let's see. Next slide, please. Next slide. So in the case of our lesson, the title was Changing Environment, and the grammar was on expressing necessity and obligation by using must and have to. So students were encouraged to work in pair to create a story about environmental change. And they had to reuse the vocabulary we learned in class and the grammar we practiced. They were also given a template with some specific guidelines. Next slide, please. So here is the presentation of the template. The template is a page long with 4 panels. And the students were brushed up about the comic strip layout. And they were given instruction to write a descriptive sentence on the first panel. And on the second panel, they had to draw and describe a changing situation. And on the third panel, they had to write a sentence that expresses an obligation or a necessity. on the last panel, they had to write a sentence that that will describe hope or the result of the actions they talked about in panel 3. Next slide, please. Now, in class, we also reviewed a few writing prompts before they got started. And as you can see, to motivate them, we asked them to work on the language outside of the class. And this part was given as an assignment. So on the next, in the next class, the student came up with some very interesting results. Next slide, please. So here are a few productions made by my students, and some of them were pretty well, they were able to follow pretty well the instruction. And for most of them, if not all of them, it was the first experience creating a comic strip. So it was a really, really big challenge for them and a very interesting activity. So you can see now they have drawn some pictures about problem we have in our environment, like pollution, like the problem of cleanliness, etc. And you can see that they did not need to write a lot of sentences to make these panels. Next slide, please. So here are a few production. After finishing the comic strip, the production were dispatched around the class. In groups, the student had to review the products and rate the comics according to some evaluation criteria we previously discussed in class. And those entailed originality, the use of grammar, vocabulary related to, and the vocabulary related to the lesson. And the students were asked to select a representative who will react on behalf of the group. And they had to say what they liked about the activity, the challenge they had working in group or making the comics. And finally, the representative had to vote for the 3 best productions. Next slide, please. Now, as a final step, the students were given the instruction to write a paragraph using the sentences they had written on the panel. And the pretext was that the English club was asking them to write a comic strip on the occasion of the celebration of Arbor Day and Earth Day. And to give more substance to their paragraph, they had to include more ideas that illustrate the problem of change, and also sentences that would suggest necessary actions to take if we want to improve our environment. Next slide, please. So conducting this lesson with my student has revealed a lot to me about my students' earnest to produce a small piece of story based on comics. It has also shown me that there are a lot of more activities we can do to boost our students' motivation to improve their writing in and outside the classroom. In fact, these techniques to developing writing by using visual storytelling in the classroom can be adapted to create different types of writings. It can be adapted on many topics, ranging from biographies, health, social issues, teens, and adult problems. The paragraph writing task also can be adapted to practice more writing sub-skills. And this opens up new challenges and perspectives about how to extend these teaching tips into an approach that will cater for the development of conventional writing tasks. Throughout the presentation, we've talked about how comics have been timidly used in the Senegalese English classroom. But also, we've talked about how it can be used as a stimulus to develop writing, the writing skills of our students. We have shown that assigning a comic creation activity can be a powerful channel through which we can motivate our students to improve their writing. And in so doing, we solve many problems related to teaching English, to teaching writing in the Senegalese learning environment. Thank you. Now, this is the end of our presentation. I would like to invite you to look at my lesson plan. There is a lesson plan I'm going to share with you, and there is also there are two templates. The two templates we used in this project is also included in the lesson plan. So you can check it out. You can adapt the lesson plan and improve it, and use it for your own purpose. Thank you again for your attention. Thank you.